Good evening, and thank you for viewing the October 20th meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as teleconference in response to local efforts to reduce the COVID-19 virus. New cases continue to be reported in Humboldt County. The city urges residents to get vaccinated as our best defense against the virus and the personal and economic impacts it has on our town. Before we start with our regular council meeting agenda, we do have a special meeting item to open up. So to start tonight's meeting, we will do the flag salute. Please join me if you would like to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Here.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Mayor Watson is absent.
Thank you. So our special meeting agenda item, Mayor Watson is not present tonight due to personal reasons, and for continued efficient operations of city business, tonight we will open the election for the replacement of mayor and vice mayor. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening. So several years ago, the City Council implemented a suggested rotation to the elected mayor and vice mayor, which is outlined in your protocol manual, which also happens to be in your packet this evening. The rotation of the mayor and vice mayor is based on the length of time that a council member has served without being in the elected mayor position, and if needed, the total vote count of specific elections if two or more members were elected in the same election cycle. In our specific situation this evening, the rotation would result in Stacey Atkins Salazar as mayor and Emily Goldstein as vice mayor. The protocol, I just want to share, does also allow a council member to decline to serve as mayor or vice mayor. And in this case, that nomination would just pass 1 year on the rotation. And then the next council member on that list would fall into that position. So they would just drop back 1 year. But again, the protocol manual is just suggestions, so you don't have to follow that this evening, but that is how the rotation would work.
Thank you. So before we discuss this or make any motions, is there anyone from the public that's wishing to comment on this item tonight?
I'll just remind the public, if you are logged on to the Zoom meeting webinar, click on the raise your hand. And if you are on phone, then go ahead and press *9. I see no public comment for this item.
Okay, so that takes it back to council for discussions or motions.
I would like to make a motion to elect Stacey Atkins Salazar as mayor and Emily Grace Goldstein as vice mayor. Until December 22nd, 2022, 21, 22, 22, 22.
Second.
So I've been nominated for mayor, and Councilmember Goldstein has been nominated for vice mayor through December of 2022. All those in favor? Aye.
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 The motion carries. Before we move on, is there any further discussion on this particular agenda item tonight?
Yes, I'd like to read a statement and make a motion. So I move to have a vote of no confidence for Councilmember Brett Watson. For the public listening in, this means that I move to hold a vote to determine if the council believes Councilmember Watson is fit to serve on Arcata City Council. We have no legal ability to remove him from the City Council. However, I believe we owe it to the people of Arcata to make it clear we do not align ourselves with the actions of Councilmember Watson. This last week, information came to light regarding alleged behaviors of Councilmember Watson that negatively affected the city and some of its staff members. It is our responsibility now as a council to protect the well-being of our employees and the ability of our city to run smoothly. While to some of you, it may seem unfair that we are moving forward with this vote of no confidence when Councilmember Watson is not present, we did feel it was important to be transparent with the residents of Arcata and share that this decision of leadership rotation and this proposed vote were made based on a body of information, although some of this cannot be shared publicly at this time. I have previously conveyed my thoughts to Councilmember Watson, and he has been made aware that this vote would move forward at this evening's council meeting. I do not take this decision lightly. I have shared all I can at this time, and the city will address the alleged actions in a confidential manner. At this time, I move we vote no confidence for Brett Watson's service as an Arcata City Council member.
I second that movement.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. I would just like to say that Vice Mayor Goldstein summed up the situation quite well, and we've been elected to help run and guide the city of Arcata, and that's exactly what we want to do and are trying to do. And so it's important that we move forward. And so to reiterate, this was not taken lightly. Okay, so with that, we're going to adjourn the special meeting and open our regular meeting. So we will be going offline for about a minute so that our technology can catch up, and then we will come back on. So we'll see you in about 1 minute. Welcome back to our regularly scheduled council meeting for October 20th. I just would like to remind you that if you would like to make a comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do so. If you are logged on to the Zoom meeting webinar, click the raise your hand on the right-hand side of your screen. When it is time for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to comment. You can also access the meeting by phone. Call the number at the bottom of the screen, enter the meeting ID also at the bottom of the screen, press *9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it is time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute your phone. You will hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted. So agenda item 3 is ceremonial matters. And so Councilmember Schaefer will be reading a proclamation in recognition of California Retired Teachers Week.
Thank you. As both a daughter and a granddaughter of California retired teachers, I'm happy to read this proclamation in recognition of California Retired Teachers Week. Whereas the California Retired Teachers Association was formed by Laura E. Settle in 1929 at the start of the Great Depression with the goal of relieving the economic hardships suffered by retired teachers, and for 92 years has been a leading advocate for providing teachers with sufficient retirement income. And whereas the California Retired Teachers Association also provides whereas continuing support to active and future teachers, providing grants, scholarships, and donations totaling more than $600,000 a year. And whereas a vast majority of California's retired teachers share a commitment to improve their communities through volunteer activities totaling more than 4,000 hours of service. And whereas the annual dollar value of this volunteer time donated by retired teachers throughout the state nearly reached $65 million during the most recent reporting period. And whereas last year in Arcata, local retired teachers donated $2,500 in scholarships and $500 to each of our museums and the Sequoia Park Education Fund. Additionally, they volunteered their time in schools, museums, hospitals, the Little Red Schoolhouse, food bank, and other community organizations. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes November 7th through 13th, 2021 as California Retired Teachers Week in Arcata and encourages residents to honor all teachers and acknowledge the vital role that retired teachers fulfill in every community in California. Signed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. Next, we have reports by commission or committees, and I don't believe that we have any. Okay, so moving on to item 5 is our early communications. So this 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time are limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers. Please raise your hand if you are on Zoom or press *9 if you are calling in by phone and wish to make a comment. And just to remind, this is for items that are not on the agenda.
Our first speaker will be call-in user 2. Go ahead, call-in user 2. Can you unmute yourself? Call-in user. All right, we'll move on and come back to call-in user. Go ahead, Mark Delaney.
This is Mark Delaney. Oh, let me turn that one off. You can hear me? I understand you?
We can.
Okay, I would just like to remind you that Arcata has an ordinance for public participation for 3 minutes. 5 to 3 minutes, not 2 minutes. Also, I want to report a technical problem. In a special meeting, there was no volume. I couldn't hear anything. I don't know if you ever got to public comments, but I have a public comment about the United States. You do not go by allegations. People are innocent until proven guilty. Brett has been a wonderful person in the county, a wonderful volunteer. I've worked with him in the county's Homeless Solutions and Housing Trust Fund Committee. And in my 3 years of experience with San Francisco mayors as a senior consultant there, I'm appalled at Arcata's continued due process, just not even following your own rules. Brett is a wonderful servant, and he should be given every opportunity to go through a legal process to ascertain his guilt or innocence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have another speaker?
Yes, can you unmute yourself? Call-in user 2. All right, we'll go to Sue. Go ahead.
Hi, my computer is actually working correctly right now.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just have 2 comments. The first one is that I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but on the Zoom, it's very difficult to know which council member in actual fact is speaking. So to know who has made a motion and who has not made a motion is actually quite complex. I don't know if there's a way to deal with that right now. And the second is you have just made in the special meeting, you made a second agenda item, and you did not open that up to public comment. I'm not sure whether or not that motion was permitted to be open to public comment, but you made the motion, seconded the motion, approved the motion, but there was no opening to the public. And I'm just not quite clear how that process worked. I've just read the agenda and I couldn't figure it out.
Thank you, Sue. Do we have anyone else?
I see no other public comment.
Okay, thank you. And there will be time at the end of the meeting for more items that are not on the agenda. So next we will go to the consent calendar, item number 7. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. So we have item A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of October 6th, 2021. Item B, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of October 13th, 2021. C, biweekly report on general warrants. D, approve the purchase of one 2022 Ford Escape hybrid vehicle and award a purchase contract to Harper Ford Motors for a total of $30,083.87, including tax and tire fee. Authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. E is designate an authorized representative for the State Water Resource Control Board's areage program. Is there any council member that would like to remove an item? Okay, is there any member of the of our staff that would like to remove an item?
Nope.
Okay, and anyone from the public that would like to remove an item?
Nope, seeing none.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion on the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer and a second by Councilmember Matthews. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes with 4 ayes. Okay, so that takes us into old business. So we have the discussion and consideration of adoption of ordinance number 1552, adding Chapter 5, Residential Rental Inspection Program, to Title 8 of the Building Regulations of the Arcata Municipal Code. Waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. May we please have a staff report?
Yes, thank you. So tonight I'm just going to review the Arcata proposed residential rental inspection program, and then we'll go through at the end sort of what the council's options are tonight. So the program goals, just to review, were to address substandard housing issues that have been raised both to the city council members over a number of years, to achieve some minimum health standards and safety standards, to overall improve the city's housing stock, enhance and preserve the quality of life for all of the tenants, homeowners, and neighborhood, while working collaboratively with landlords, tenants, and neighbors to improve this program over time. The program, just in the very basics, would be required for all residential units that are rented. There are a few exemptions that will be covered on the next slide. All property owners will have to register for the program, and they'll pay an annual registration fee. That fee will range from $20 to $200 per parcel per year, depending on the number of units on the parcel, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. All required units will be inspected at least one time during the first 3 years of the program by a City of Arcata inspector. After the first inspection, properties that pass the inspection and meet the program criteria can elect to either remain in the standard program and be inspected by the city once every 3 years, or they can opt to self-certify by inspecting each of their units every year and maintaining records of the inspections. After 5 years of self-inspection, the property owner then would attest to their self-inspections, and they could at that point either convert to the city's standard program or request to be continued to be enrolled in the self-certification program. There are a few exceptions to the program. Those would be rooms that are rented to an individual in an owner-occupied single-family residence, hotel or motels for stays that are subject to what we call TOT, Transient Occupancy Tax, so less than 30 days. Units that are already inspected by another governmental authority, mobile home parks, and the newly constructed residential units that are less than 5 years old. The program fees are proposed if you have a residential dwelling unit. If you have 1 to 2 on a parcel, it'd be $20 a year. 3 to 4 on a parcel, $25 a year. 5 to 10 units on a parcel, $30 a year. 11 to 19 units on a parcel, $50 a year. 20 to 49 units on a parcel, $75 per year. 50 or above would be $200 a year. In addition to the annual registration fee, there would be a charge at the time of inspection. So the year that your property was inspected, if let's just say you had a single-family home that you rented, then the cost of that inspection would be $70. If you had multiple units on a parcel, it would be $70 an hour, and we would do as many units as we could each hour. If the parcel the site needed to be re-inspected because it did not pass inspection, then that would be an additional $70. And if you qualify for the self-certification program, then the year that you submit your 5 years of self-certification, attesting that you've done your certification, there would be a $40 per parcel on just that 5th year for us to process that self-certification. I'm going to go through just a couple of examples because I know the fees with this, while probably not the bulk of the concern in the program because the fees are pretty low, they can also be a little confusing. So I just put up 2 examples, and the first one would be if you had 1 to 2 units on a parcel. You would pay $20 a year for your registration. At some point in that first 3 years, you would pay an initial $70 for your first inspection. And then you would decide either self-certification or continuous city inspection. So on a 5-year cost, let's say for 1 to 2 units on a parcel, you would pay $20 for each of those years, $100. You would pay $70 for the first city inspection. And then in that, I'll call it the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th column over. So these are the cost if you choose to self-certify after that. Then you would pay $40 one time for that self-certification. So for 5 years of the program, it would be $210. If you chose to stay within the city program, or you had to stay within the city program because you didn't meet the qualifications for self-certification, then it would be $240 for that first 5-year period. By contrast, if you had 40 units on a parcel, you would pay $75 a year. You would pay $70 an hour for the inspection of those units. And then after that, if you qualified for self-certification, you would still just pay the $40. So a 5-year total with self-certification after the first inspection would be $75 times 5 years. I estimated about 3 hours to do sort of a random sampling of those 40 units. So that would be $210. That's also obviously going to be completely contingent on the condition of the units that we're inspecting. But let's say you do pass and you are eligible for self-certification, then you would have one $40 fee. So 5-year total for 40 units would be $625. And if you had 40 units without self-certification, the total cost for the 5 years of the program would be $795. So those are just a couple of examples, and we'd be happy to go through others if people had questions. The options for consideration for the council this evening. So on September 15th, the council did introduce Ordinance 1552. Based on feedback really from the council meeting that night, as well as subsequent public meetings that staff has had, and phone calls and emails and input that we've received over the last month, there are a few suggested changes to the ordinance that are included in your packet in a track changes version. So your options tonight would be if you wanted to adopt an ordinance and move it forward, you would need to adopt the original ordinance that was introduced on September 15th. Alternatively, you could have discussion tonight, make any additional changes, and reintroduce Ordinance 1552, accepting those staff recommendations that you want to include and any other changes you would like to make. And then that would return at your next meeting for a final reading and adoption. Or certainly you can direct staff to continue research, to continue public outreach, to answer some specific questions, and then bring back that feedback to you. So that was just a very quick overview, and I'm really happy to answer any questions, but I know we've had lots of discussion in public meetings on this already.
Okay, does anyone have questions or discussion for this particular item?
Okay, I can open it up. So just a few points that I want to talk about and are kind of questions, but a lot of my questions were answered by the helpful in the packet, the kind of draft FAQ that is out. But just some concerns that I have, mostly based around outreach and kind of developing a program that's really going to work for everybody and have a lot of buy-in that can be successful. I've done a lot of research and read a lot of articles about programs that were both successful and not successful, and seeing that in communities where there was a lack of buy-in from both tenants and landlords, and also, realtors in the community, homeowners, everybody that can be, basically a stakeholder in this, that these programs would often fail or people would be unhappy with them. And I also think that it's important to kind of add maybe some elements that would provide even greater tenant protection. The state of California does a very good job at protecting tenants, but also being able to include things perhaps like rent control or expanding on state guidelines on eviction, and also providing funds for relocation if in that extreme circumstance that happens to tenants and landlords are unable or unwilling to pay relocation. I think including elements like that in a program like this could be, very helpful, and also, kind of include those safeguards to protect tenants, because that really at the core, a program like this is to protect tenants, but I do have some concerns about how this will not do that. First of all, the checklist, there are some few things on there that kind of concern me, especially checklist items that actually kind of are more targeting tenant actions rather than, just the state of the house and landlord action, or I guess in this case, lack of action. And just concerns about things such as item 1.3, storage of junk and rubbish and or overgrown vegetation that is oftentimes a burden on the tenant, and so especially I think targeting folks that might not have the resources or ability or money to be able to deal with things like that. And then also item 1.5, the inoperable and unregistered vehicles. Again, I feel like that particularly targets tenants, especially low-income tenants that might not, be able to afford to remove that kind of stuff, or, might be in a transitionary period, and they might have their inspection at the wrong time and they've got a, junk car sitting in the side yard. So I think some of the stuff on that checklist, might more so target tenants and actually have a negative impact and repercussion on tenants when, the intent is to support tenants and, not have to have them, make sure that they're not the ones always having to call code enforcement. But I think making sure that we have a really comprehensive checklist that isn't targeting certain tenant actions as well is important. And then also I would really like to see, and I guess the option was brought up as that third option tonight, to kind of have more outreach by staff, to kind of create a diverse stakeholder working group and to do better outreach and kind of make a program that's going to work for everybody. I mean, I know one example is, I know Seattle is obviously much bigger than Arcata, but they had a working group that worked for over 6 months, meeting monthly, if not more often, to kind of develop this program beforehand. And so I know that we've received a lot of public comment, especially from local agencies and local landlords that feel like they are surprised by this coming forward. And, even for myself, having only had one update before this, and then this is only the second meeting that we're seeing this, I feel like I don't have enough, information, and I don't feel comfortable enough moving forward on this yet tonight without more outreach. And then another just question I wanted to ask, or I guess a concern to bring up, is just that this seems right now a very large program for the city to implement, and that if we were to successfully implement it, I think we need a little bit more time, first of all, to hire the necessary building officials who will be doing these inspections. I currently believe we're already down one building official and then would need to hire another one in addition, so we're looking at hiring 2 building officials for this. And then also, building an online database for this kind of information and the, kind of, because I know that was spoken about, the kind of extent that would take, more time to kind of develop something that's going to be really successful when it comes out. So, yeah, that's where I'm standing right now.
Yeah, I think Sarah pretty much echoed a lot of the concerns I had as well. And, I appreciate all of your comments and all of the extensive research you've done. I have, in the last several weeks, talked to a lot of folks as well that have concerns. And one of some of the most resounding feedback I did get was the creation of more focus groups and more conversations with large property owners, medium-sized, small landlords and tenants too, and have a real comprehensive task force to really nail down what this should look like. So I definitely agree it needs some more work. So thank you.
I would agree. I think the feedback we've been hearing, it's clear that more conversation needs to be had, more education and outreach. I've had tenants reach out saying that their landlords are saying if this is passed, they're going to be evicted, which is not true. And so I think, Councilmember Schaefer said it beautifully that we need to ensure that this ordinance has strong tenant protections and that also we are doing outreach and listening to landlords and getting their buy-in for this to be successful. So I agree as well.
And I just want to also thank the city for all the work that they've put into coming up with this very comprehensive thing. And I know it was not a small undertaking. So we appreciate that and the more work that we'll task you to do moving forward.
Yeah, and to echo that, I think that we're all on the same page with definitely wanting to recognize staff's hard work, and this is in no reflection it's not to be reflecting poorly on them. We just think that there needs to be a little more time devoted to this. A lot of my notes do echo what Councilmember Schaefer opened with. But if you look at the very first page of the ordinance, item C, it says, the City Council further finds and declares the desire to nurture the stock of safe and sanitary rental housing in the city through a partnership of owners, tenants, the city, and the community. So I really think that word partnership is kind of what we're all speaking to this evening. In order to effectively work together, we need to have a significant level of buy-in from the community, and at this point in time, I believe that this aspect is still lacking. So I would like to allow for time for more outreach and collaboration. Since our last discussion of this item, I've received an enormous amount of communications regarding this proposed ordinance. I also spent time talking to Chief Justin McDonald, our fire chief, as well as the fire prevention team, and they had some good input that we could use towards this. For a few people in general have been categorically in support of or against the ordinance, but the majority of people, including those that own and manage, like the large-scale rental complexes, actually support the intention of the ordinance. They're just not in support of it as it is currently written. They feel that's a lot of the feedback that I think we've all received as that there's just some practical aspects that maybe are going to be hard to transition. In conversations that I've had with people, there have been many valid constructive criticisms and concerns that were raised, and along with a lot of possible solutions. So people weren't just complaining, but really had some good ideas. So I think it kind of reflects what everybody here is saying. But in my opinion, for an ordinance that will directly affect so many of our residents, including renters, my suggestion is that we authorize our city manager to create a working group or advisory group of a variety of experienced individuals to see if we can craft an ordinance that is more widely supported. And I would like to see it done as an advisory group or a subgroup rather than like a Zoom meeting, because it would, in my opinion, to have a working group of people like what you mentioned that Seattle did, if we have people that are willing to come and put in that time so that they can be in a room with staff and actually have conversations and back and forth. So, and I feel like our city manager, would be able to put such a thing together. She knows who to reach out to. So that's my opinion on that.
I really love that idea, and I think that would really meet a lot of the needs that we've been having asked to us. I would encourage that at least one work group member be somebody who is a renter who has had poor experiences with living conditions in Arcata. I think that it's easy to say, oh, it's not that bad. Not that anyone is saying that, but that, if you're not living through it, I think it's not quite the same. And so I would just encourage that we have somebody who's actually lived through, dealing with poor rental conditions to speak to their own experience and maybe the experience of others that they've heard.
Yeah, and one of the other, some of the other feedback I got would be along with this, maybe crafting some language and some, ways to help maybe landlords that are struggling to bring their buildings up to code. There's some resources to help them kind of be able to do that on their own before this is even enacted, and give them some tools.
And for the subgroup, I definitely agree that we need to have at least a renter on there, and preferably with, the experience that Vice Mayor Goldstein mentioned. I think it would also be wise to have, if we're, to have like a property manager or owner, and maybe of a couple different levels of, someone that's a larger scale operator, and then someone that's very small, maybe only has one or two rentals, just to get that difference of opinion. So I think what we all want is just to be really diverse, so we can cover our bases and the community can really, truly feel like they participated in this process and made a difference. Do we need a motion on that, or can we?
We've got 3 in the queue right now for public comment.
Okay, let's turn to public comment. Thank you.
All right, first will be David Nims, followed by Mark Delaney. Go ahead, David.
Good evening. Thank you for your thorough discussion and consideration of this, and not rushing it to a vote. I'm an attorney with the law firm Jansen Malloy. We represent Strombeck Properties and its principal, Steve Strombeck. I wrote a letter to the Building and Engineering Department October 5th, expressing some concerns about the city ordinance as written. I'll simply direct the city council to that letter and mention that it's heartening to see that the city is seeking further community input, and rather than making more specific comments, I think my client would be interested in engaging with the city to craft a well-reasoned ordinance that will achieve these noble objectives. So thank you, and I have no further comments at this time.
Thank you, David.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can.
A couple of things. I just want to report that the technical problems still exist. Would you please use nameplates, because it's very hard to identify you all. The second person on the left, screen position 2 for me, I applaud her position. The fourth person on the far right, I applaud your position. Again, my expertise, I worked with this, when I lived in Arcata, I was on the Historic Housing Review Committee. Now I'm on the Housing Trust Fund Homeless Solutions Committee. I think this effort is very good effort, but you've exempted all the worst people, the units that you really need to be inspecting. You're going to burden the already unaffordable housing in Arcata. It's not a good idea. It's a good idea to inspect the mobile housing. It's a good idea to inspect all the other housing that's not inspected on HQS. I'm an HQS inspector. I've developed 10,000 units in San Francisco of affordable housing, according to Spur. This is not a good program. It can be a good program. It could be a great program, but you're exempting the people that are the very, very worst. I have 2 other comments. I don't know how you want to do this in protocol, because I did advise you that your own Arcata protocol manual says, ordinance says 3 to 5 minutes. I'd appreciate if you did that, or the Brown Act allows you to comment on that and say, no, I'm wrong. So I appreciate that. And then I'd like to come back at the end and ask if I can run for mayor in Arcata when I'm not a resident of Arcata. Thank you very much. And I hope you continue to work on this program, and I would maybe help you.
Thank you, Mark. Next will be call-in user 3. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead, call-in user 3. Are you able to unmute yourself? All right, call-in user 3. I'm going to ask you to unmute via Zoom. Do you get anything? All right, I can't seem to get him to unmute. All right, I think that is our last public speaker. Sorry, call-in user. Oh, wait, you're there. You're on. Oh, you're muted again. You were so close. All right, we'll see if call-in user 3 comes back. We'll turn it back. Oh, we do have a couple more. Go ahead, Anna.
Hi, I'm a parent with lots of experience with a lot of these issues. I would be happy to follow up with all of this. I'm just not familiar with the aspects of the ordinance, but it's really important in the long term on both sides. No, just I was just thinking thank you.
Thank you, Anna. All right, there's no more public comment.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So do we, I think we're all in agreement of how to proceed. Do we need a motion on this?
I feel like that's ample direction. We'll just continue working, and we will pull that together, and I'll just give you an update at your next meeting. Be fine. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so for new business, we have appoint 2 members to the Public Safety Committee for terms expiring. So we have 2 different terms, one that expires of September 30th of 2022, and one that expires September 30th of 2024. So I wanted to thank the 6 people that did apply and interview for this position. We appreciate that. Do we have any questions or comments from council?
I was really grateful and impressed by all of you. I thought all 6 of you did a really great job, and these are never easy discussions. I would say for me, Justin Fox and Laura Montagna both stood out for me in terms of their background and their experience. So I just wanted to put those 2 names out there. But everyone really did a really wonderful job. So thank you all for applying.
Yes, as someone that has served on committees before, I just really appreciate your willingness to devote time, to the public. And I also thought that Justin Fox and Laura Montagna were standouts to me as well. But thank you so much, everybody. There's lots of other committees that have vacancies. So please if you're interested in serving the city, I'd encourage you to look at other committees.
Agreement. And I was going to make a motion. I just am unsure if these folks have preferences about the 2 terms that they are serving and dates and whether they will be able to fulfill those terms. But do I have to specify, which ones when I make the motion, or does it matter? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it would be helpful if we specified which was in which slot, and whoever gets selected for 2022, if they want to continue, that will come before you then.
Okay, great.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's see if there's any members of the public wanting to comment on this item.
I have, hand went down. Oh, nope, hand's still up. Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I had 2 more comments on the last item. Of that, on the housing program you're trying to develop, the Honorable Mayor Brett Watson had suggested at the Housing Trust Fund Homeless Solutions Committee that you consider vacancy taxes, because I think there's about 600 empty vacant or
Mr.
partially
Delaney,
inhabited at the time.
I'm sorry to stop you, but we're just taking comment on this particular item. So would you like to make
Okay, I'll go on to this item.
Yeah,
It's
thank
very
you.
difficult to join a committee in Arcata because it's so controlled by the community development director. Your last community development director left in disgrace, and his deputy is now in charge, and he manipulates the committees. And no one's going to do that. No one wants to be a marionette. So good luck.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Do we have anyone else?
No other public comment.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we appoint Justin Fox to the Public Safety Committee for a term ending September 30th, 2022, and to appoint Laura Montagna to a term on the Public Safety Committee ending September 30th, 2024.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to appoint Justin Fox and Laura Montagna. That was made by Councilmember Schaefer and seconded by Councilmember Matthews. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes with 4 votes of aye. Okay, so our next step is to conduct a public hearing to receive input regarding unmet transit needs and direct staff to forward all comments to the Humboldt County Association of Governments. May we please have a staff report?
I'm just going to introduce our transit manager, Leanne Schultze. Leanne, do you want to go ahead and open this agenda item?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or actually ladies, City Council, City of Arcata employees, and the public. So annually, the Humboldt County Association of Governments, HCOG, reviews the unmet transit needs through a multi-jurisdictional public hearing process throughout Humboldt County. As part of the annual process, HCOG encourages member entities to conduct separate public hearings, so every city has a public hearing, and receive local comments. Comments can also be mailed in, emailed in, and telephoned in prior to December 31st, 2021 to be included in this year's report of findings. You can send your comments regarding Arcata Mad River Transit System directly to me at Arcata Mad River Transit System at 736 F Street in Arcata. You can email them to me. HCOG office will also take your comments directly, and you can mail them to attention Beth Burks at 611 I Street, Suite B in Eureka, 95501. And we will take them at any time and even throughout the year, because we hold them, we put them together, and then we bring them back towards the end of the year to make our Unmet transit.
All right, thank you, Leanne. Back to the council.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the council?
Should we talk about unmet transit needs? Can I suggest one? I guess that's the point, right? Something that I've just heard from constituents would be increased bus times in the evenings, especially for HSU students trying to get home from campus late, and especially between Eureka and Arcata later in the evenings is a request that I've heard a lot of people say that they would ride the bus more if service was offered later into the evenings. Thank you.
Perfect. I am writing it down.
Okay, so at this time, we will open it up to the public for comments on this particular agenda item.
I see no public comments on unmet transit needs. But just to remind the council, these meetings happen all over the county, so I'm sure there will be lots of comments that come in overall for the year. But no comments tonight.
Okay, and just so to clarify for the public, any of the comments generated during this public hearing process will be submitted to HCOG for inclusion in the annual Unmet Transit Needs Report or findings. So thank you for contributing, and we'll move on to the next item. All right, so next item under new business is to review and consider revisions to and approval of the City Council Protocol Manual. So could we please have a staff report?
Yeah, thank you. So this item comes before you every 2 years after the year after an election, and it is just the opportunity for the whole council and any new council members to review the protocol manual. In general, the protocol manual is just a compilation of what councils of the past have considered best practices to guide your decision-making and your public process. So there are just a few staff-suggested cleanup items in the protocol manual this evening, and it's very minor, but it's just your chance to ask questions or to suggest changes, and then we will update photos and make sure that you all have. It is nice to have kind of a written copy of that protocol manual that you can carry with you, not at all times, but during city business times, just to guide you as you move forward.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from members of the council? Okay, so I'll just say we were given this when we were elected, and it was helpful then, and it was also helpful now to read through as a reminder, so I appreciate the protocol manual and for staff's input on it. And so I think next we'll go to public comment.
All right, we have one in the queue for public comment. Mark, go ahead.
Hi, I appreciate getting some more time. Could you please read the section on the existing protocol ordinance? It's not a manual, it's an ordinance, and on how long you give speakers to talk, because it's 3 to 5 minutes, not 2. And I also would appreciate an answer to this question. The Brown Act allows you to respond briefly to questions brought up in the public that are not on the agenda. Thank you very much.
And I'll just respond to that by saying I'm quite sure that after hearing this public comment multiple times, our lawyer is looking at that and will update us on it, but we don't have that information in front of us right now. So if it is something that needs to be corrected, I apologize, and we will most definitely correct that, but we aren't able to directly answer that right now at this moment. Do we have any other members of the public?
There are no other members of the public.
Okay, I believe that takes us to our oral and written. Oh, we did not vote.
Move forward with the suggested changes, so I just need a motion tonight.
I'm just trying to move on.
I move that we approve the suggested changes to the revised City Council Protocol Manual 2021.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Schaefer and a second by Vice Mayor Goldstein. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes with 4 ayes. Okay, so now we will move on to our last section. So this is, again, a chance for oral and communications from the public for items that were not on the agenda. So for this last section, we will be providing you with 3 minutes for time to speak. So yeah, if there's anybody wishing to comment on anything that was not on the agenda, now is your turn.
All right, and we do have, our first speaker is Mark Delaney, and I think this will in part answer your previous question, that this oral communications at the end of the meeting is the time where we have traditionally ensured at least 3 minutes. So go ahead, you should be allowed to talk. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it. But I see you kicked it up to 3 minutes, and I'm wondering what the changes that you just approved were. Are those on the staff packet? Because I didn't see them and I didn't hear you discuss them. And I think that one of the changes might be that you're lowering it from 3 to 5 minutes to 2 minutes, which is just crazy because you're asking over and over again for input on these things that you're proposing, but yet you're cutting it down. 2 minutes, 1 minute, how about 15 seconds? Will that be okay? Just people raise their hand, say yes or no? This is a democracy. The other question I had was, am I able to run as for mayor in Arcata, even though I don't live in Arcata? Because you all don't represent me. I don't vote for you. You're making decisions that affect me, but I don't vote for you. That's unconstitutional. And that's going to be a problem in the near future. The question is, did you just change it to 3 minutes because the protocol manual says, and the ordinance says, Arcata's ordinance on protocol speaking with the council says 3 to 5 minutes, which you have continually neglected tonight. Sorry to chastise you, but really.
You are absolutely welcome to your opinion.
It's not an opinion. It's not an opinion. It's in the ordinance. Read the ordinance. You said you don't read the ordinance. Read the ordinance. Thank you.
You're welcome. Karen, did you have a response for that?
Just to clarify, there weren't any suggested changes in your protocol manual tonight that had anything to do with oral communication time periods on your agenda. When the City Council many years ago instituted a second period for oral communications, at that time, there were many people that were, at that time we were in-person meetings, that came and sat through very, very lengthy meetings to simply make a quick announcement at the end of the meeting. It could have been the Oyster Festival or, something. And so the council instituted an early oral communications and tried to set aside just 15 minutes. So in that time frame, they tried to get 7 speakers at 2 minutes each, recognizing that we do have the standard oral communications at the end of the meeting, that we would always allow a limit of 3 minutes at the end of the meeting when we've got time, if people waited through, the rest of the meeting. So I don't know if that's part of the confusion, but I did want to just ensure that there weren't any changes that were made to that in your protocol manual tonight.
And I want to add too, those times are explicitly stated in the agenda. In early oral communications, it says 2 minutes, and in the later communications, it says 3 minutes. So it's indicated in the agenda that is released before the meeting.
Do we have any other public input?
No, we do not. Thank you.
Okay, so that will move us to council and staff reports. So I believe our finance director, Andrea, has a bit of a financial update for us.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will share my screen, so just let me know if you can see the PowerPoint slide. And 1 second. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. So tonight I will provide an update for city financial activity through September 30th of 2021. Within your packets are fund balance breakouts starting on page 233, followed by summary revenues and expenditures, and then various tracking reports. As you will recall, heading into our fiscal year 2021 budget, we included conservative estimates in order to prepare our city for the negative impacts of COVID-19 and the potential fallout of the pandemic. I first wanted to start off to say I'm happy to report that our general fund has ended our fiscal year 2021 with a surplus of over $1.4 million. This is due in part to several revenue streams performing greater than budget expectations. And this includes, but is not limited to, sales tax, transactions and use tax, transient and occupancy tax, as far as the revenue streams. And then as far as cost saving areas for the city included materials and services, personnel services, and capital outlays that help contribute to our $1.4 million surplus. And for more detailed information, I ask that you please see packet page 226 and 227 for additional breakouts on those revenue sources and the drivers, and the same for the expenditure sources and the various drivers for the decreases to general fund budget. So moving into fiscal year 2022, various concerns and reassurances related to unemployment benefits and claims. The availability to claim extended unemployment benefits ended in early September of 2021. This includes various federal and state programs. With less income, there's potential that citizens will have less dollars and less disposable income available to spend in the local economy. An associated reassurance is that the unemployment rate for Humboldt County is 6.1% as of August of 2021 versus our pandemic peak of 15.2% in April of 2020. Pre-pandemic, the unemployment rate was hovering around 4%. Although improvement has occurred, we are not yet back at pre-pandemic levels. Concerning our water and wastewater customer consumption levels, those have not yet returned back to pre-pandemic levels. We also could see the consumption levels impacted negatively if drought restrictions are enacted for Arcata. Some reassurances related to the water and wastewater consumption decreases we're seeing is that these revenue sources are currently on track compared to budget through Q1 of 2021. Those revenue sources also include year 2 of our previously adopted 5-year rate increases of 1.5% for water and 10% for wastewater to fund operational costs and capital project costs for our city. Then we also have the overarching supply chain disruption. Issues are occurring with being able to quickly move goods to their end location from point of origin. This can continue to impact manufacturers, retailers, and consumers as we head into the holiday season and into calendar year 2022. If goods or supplies are difficult to procure, this can impact sales and tax revenues negatively. Consumers are also currently experiencing increased prices of goods due to inflation and increased demand. The city will continue to monitor as these factors impact both our revenues and our expenditures from a city budget and financial tracking perspective. Good news overall is that our sales tax, our transaction use tax revenues are on track currently compared to projected budget, and the same goes for our TOT, or transient and occupancy tax. So for our sales tax, there is a tracking report for the revenues, which is currently included on page 258 of the council report. This chart is a tracking mechanism to compare actual revenues versus city forecasted revenues, and also against our third-party consultant, HDL. We are currently exceeding September 2020 revenues by about $18,000. We are on track overall budget-wise. As the city receives additional funding through November of 2021, we'll have a better idea of what the sales tax revenue drivers are for the first fiscal year quarter. In the council packet, I wanted to also point out that there's an additional column versus the presentation included for fiscal year 2018 and 2019. And this is there for comparison's sake, as this was our last full pre-pandemic fiscal year. It's what we consider our baseline against future revenue years as the pandemic carries forward. When comparing, just as a high-level example of how we fared ending fiscal year 2021 compared to 2019, the city actually experienced an 8% increase overall in sales tax revenues. A similar chart is included for our transaction and use tax on page 259. The city is also seeing a slight uptick compared to 2020, about $16,000 in fiscal year 2022 compared to last year. This is also on track budget-wise. And once we receive the data through November 2021, we'll have a better indication of the revenue drivers overall for both sales tax and transaction use tax. That data will indicate if there are impacts of certain industry categories or changes in consumer habits that led to the revenues we'll have received. And once again, when comparing back to that baseline, 2021 current September revenues versus 2019 to the pre-pandemic baseline, the city experienced a 21% and over 21% increase in transactions and use tax revenues. Oops, excuse me. And then moving forward to our transient occupancy tax, the revenue comparisons are included on page 260 of your packet. The city is currently exceeding same period prior year by about $70,000. The hotel and motel operator occupancy data is tracking very similarly to October of 2020. We're seeing ranges anywhere from 84% occupancy to 95% occupancy as an indication of if their empty rooms are filled at the end of the month, and then therefore coming to a part of the calculation for what they owe in transient occupancy tax revenues. And we realize that the operators are likely increasing their costs in order to cover increasing overhead costs, but we have not yet determined if that $70,000 that we're seeing is due to other factors such as short-term rental operators coming online or other items that we could be pinpointing as far as drivers for the revenue increases. The city will also complete additional analysis as the operators will continue to remit through the end of October for September stays, and then we'll be able to report out on some of the additional drivers and the revenue increases that we're seeing for Q1 of 2021. And then moving to our water and wastewater revenues, as highlighted previously, we are on track through Q1 of 2021. However, we have seen consumption decreases across all customer classifications, so including commercial, residential, inside city limits and outside city limits compared to the same period in fiscal year 2020. But overall, we're still on track budget-wise. And the city is also in process of applying to the State Water Resources Control Board for the water arrearage program, supported by ARPA funding received by the state of California. The city is currently expecting $89,000 to be received for the water arrearage program in the next several months. And these funds will be applied directly to delinquent water customer accounts, which are negatively impacted by COVID-19 per the State Water Resources Control Board guidelines. We also anticipate being able to submit an application in February of 2022 for wastewater arrearages, and then those revenues to be received will be calculated at a later date. I also wanted to point out that per the website housing.ca.gov, applications are still being accepted and the portal is still open to residents who are either landlords or tenants to apply and see if they are eligible for COVID-19 rent and utility relief. Funding is available for both back rent and utilities. We encourage residents to please apply to see if you're eligible for payment relief. Once again, that website is housing.ca.gov. And then moving forward to current outlook. So overall, throughout the pandemic period and where we're at today, regionally, we have fared better than other hard-hit areas such as the Bay Area. The far north region, which is what Arcata is lumped into as far as analysis goes, when HDL's, our third-party sales tax consultants, is providing us with comparison data. We experienced a 10% increase in point of sales during fiscal year 1920 compared to our pre-pandemic levels, and 11% increase when comparing fiscal year 2021 to 1920. And just to kind of give you a perspective, when comparing the same periods for the Bay Area compared to their baseline, for 1819, they had an 8% decrease. And then for fiscal year 2020, 2021 to 1920, they only saw a mere 1% increase for their point of sales. And overall, the outlook continues to remain positive in fiscal year 2022 for local tax revenues, despite the supply chain issues, potential pricing issues, and labor concerns, such as staff shortages or increase in labor costs. And just today, Governor Newsom signed Executive Order number 19-21 to address supply chain congestion at California shipping ports. And some of those items as part of that executive order I'll highlight include identifying priority freight routes, potentially reducing weight limits on roads for transportation, identifying short-term state-owned sites as storage spaces for freight, and additional workforce training and educational programs. But also like to note that Governor Newsom has also declared a drought emergency for the entire state of California today. Overall, initial indications show that city revenues and expenditures are tracking on target for fiscal year 21-22 through Q1 of 2021. And staff will continue to update the council on if and how these recent developments continue to impact our local economy. So I'm ending my presentation there, and I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any members of the councils that have questions for Andrea?
I don't have a question, but thank you, Andrea, for being so thorough, and also just thank you to the entire city staff and past council as well for just being so conservative in your estimates and just seeing how we are actually kind of coming out a little bit on top from COVID and, you know, working through that. So I just want to say, you know, thank you to everybody that made those decisions, and looks like we're doing well. So thank you.
I completely agree. Yeah, and just want to echo, thank you so much. We have very hardworking and incredible staff at the city, and your work is keeping us on track, and it's very, very appreciated. So thank you.
Okay, I think we might have someone from the public that would like to comment, so we'll go to public comment.
Go ahead, Mark.
Mark, that was a great presentation. I just want to give you some institutional information. I've worked with the company Humboldt Homes that we import from China a product that's combined with other things for the ADU market. And our suppliers in China report that the situation may clear up sooner than later. The state considers Arcata a wealthy city, and everyone is not doing as well as you. I'm in Arizona right now. I work with NACOG and other governments here. We're not doing very well. Arcata has a very slim margin there. In about 8 years ago, as part of the Humboldt Civil Liberties Defense Fund, we requested what were the costs of outside attorneys for Arcata, and they refused to give us that information. They had to sue. We got that information. It was appalling, tremendously appalling. And you're going to lose a lot of cases in the near future, I guarantee it. So if you have that slim margin, you got $1 million, I'm glad to hear that, because I might need $1 million from you at this point. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other members of the public?
No other public comment.
Okay, so that actually does lead me into a question. One of the things that jumped out at me, obviously, was that we have a surplus of $1.48 million, and I'm sure that jumped out to a lot of people. So, what is the method in which we go about deciding where that money should be used?
Yeah, that is residual from last fiscal year budget. So it is a carryover, and it is available to put towards priority projects. My conservative recommendation has always been to wait until we get to the full mid-year, make sure that halfway through this year we're still on track. We also do still have some ARPA funds that we will be allocating, and I think at that mid-year point that would be my recommendation. So, I mean, often those funds are just held in that reserve until you have a project that comes up, but I would suggest that you have a more formal conversation about that at mid-year.
Okay, thank you. That sounds reasonable. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so that takes us to an update on the status of safe parking programs from our city manager.
Yeah, just quickly, actually, Vice Mayor Goldstein and I had the opportunity to touch base with Darlene Spohr from Arcata House Partnership today at the Homelessness Services Working Group meeting that kind of came in as a serial meeting, I guess, today, sort of, with people in and out. And they are still actively working on their proposal. She is hoping to have a draft that's available for her board next week to review, and then to be able to forward that to us. In the meantime, city staff are looking at potential properties and the cost cost to sort of build out just the basic security fencing, water, sewer, and electrical on those spaces, so that we should be able to bring that whole package to you. I do still think, I can't guarantee that we're really going to have that package by your next council meeting, but certainly by the one after that, I think we'll be able to have some details to discuss with the council.
Are there any questions or comments for Karen? Okay, so it's time for any other staff or council reports. Do we have any staff reports?
No other staff reports this evening. I just did want to thank the community for their patience as we are in sort of our traditional paving season. We like to pave the minute the rains start. We're really good at it. So you'll notice that along Union and along F Street, and if you live in the Sunnybrae neighborhood, our paving project will be coming to the Sunnybrae neighborhood within the next couple of weeks. But we are excited to have those contractors starting work right now and making those improvements before the real winter rains hit. So.
Thank you. Any council members with reports?
Sure. If anybody's interested, there is a multi-chamber chamber mixer tomorrow night on Zoom. You can find the link at the Arcata Chamber of Commerce website. I think that should be really interesting. Also, the city of Arcata has posted a lot of zero waste ideas for the upcoming Halloween. So please read them and do your best with that. We are still in a climate emergency, and let's really try to be as zero waste as possible. Thank you.
I'll do a report from Main Street, just that we've got some Halloween events planned on the 31st, which is a Sunday from 11 to 4 on the plaza. There will be an art market, games, music, some school fundraisers, photo opportunities, and some limited trick-or-treating. And we're also starting to go into the planning for the Season of Wonder and Lights that happens in December. So some good things happening in town. All right, if there is nothing else at this time, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. So thank you, everyone. Good evening.